Good morning, Bridge Church. Pastor Tim here, kind of on our weekly wrap-up or overview or kind of what spoke to me in our gospel reading program that we're doing as a church together. Started way back. When did we start? Way back in July. And so reading one chapter a day in the Gospels, taking the weekends off, up until almost Thanksgiving. Yeah, up until right before Thanksgiving. So we're getting close to it, getting close to the end there. The last week we read Luke 17 through 21. Great. I was kind of maybe almost say that every week, but it's great of Jesus getting close to the cross. Getting close to being right before he's betrayed from Judas, so we're like right there towards that last week. It's when in Luke 21 is when his disciples there's the teaching of the widow's offering, and you can look it up there. But they're at the temple, and the widow puts in out of her poverty, and the rich guy. The others they put out of their wealth, and the temple was, but even just at that time, then Jesus tells them, well, not one stone is going to be turned upon another. This temple is going to be destroyed, and it happened 40 years later, and you can read about that elsewhere. But then the disciples ask this question. Actually, he's like, well, when will this happen? What will be the kind of the signs of this times? Because because we want to know, Jesus, when is that going to happen? Like tomorrow? They're asking Jesus, and it says in Matthew, kind of in the same reference of this same talk here, Matthew 24 verse 8. He said, Jesus said, these are like the beginning of like birth pains. Like if you've ever been. We've given birth to 4 kids and been around other people who had babies, and as the time to start, your contractions start, and they're just getting more intense. They grow and grow and grow. And so a lot of skeptics will look at some of this and say, oh gosh, that was written so long ago, and how can it even apply today? But Jesus even said, like there in Luke, in Matthew, it's going to be the slow progression. And I was thinking about that this morning. Actually, Darla and I were talking happening. So for 1,700 years, like I said, it was a horse and buggy, foot travel, didn't have the communications that we have now. Maybe they developed the shipping trade and the shipping and sailing. That was probably one of the most, more advanced things that happened in those. Maybe weaponry, just a few, nothing changed a lot for like 1,700 years. But like it says, like in the slow, like the birth pains, it's the slow progression of when these things are going to happen, when the times are basically, when is the end of time going to be, or when is the return of Christ going to be? Because I did a little bit of this morning, kind of looking up, like, the Industrial Revolution, if you know your history, happened around from 1760 to 1820. That's when we started mechanizing things, especially on the farm, and things started. We could the locomotive on the railway. We developed that in 1802. That was only 220 years ago, and compare that to the other, the 1800 years before that, how slowly, and then eventually how that even came about. In 1878, that's when Thomas Edison developed the light bulb. That was 144 years ago. Wilbur and Orville Wright, you probably remember them. The first motorized or mechanized flight, 1903, 119 years ago. The first transistor, probably many of you don't even remember what a transistor is, but that was developed in 1940. Nation against 8 nation, earthquakes in various places, famines and pestilence, that's disease, like we've kind of seen some of that. All this is like these birth pains going and getting closer and closer to the return of Christ, closer to what we maybe call the end. And it talks about being betrayed, families turning against families. And we kind of even see that some now, even in America, but even in other countries and other nations, and just how that has just keeps growing and growing. And then in verse 20 it says, on the people, means like there's going to be some serious stuff continually to happen. But here's what I want you to see. Jesus says, even so, when you see these things, when you see all that stuff up in chapter 21, when you see the betrayal, when you see what is the point? Not to freak anybody out. Because like I said, when I look at this stuff, I get excited because I see the judgment will happen. He wasn't just saying, this is a possibility. No, this is going to happen. That's with prophecy, and I heard that last night, that you may be able to escape all that is about to happen, and that you will be able to stand before the Son of God. Always be on the watch and pray. And how will you be able to escape? Because some of this stuff, he says you'll be able to escape, but not everything. But he says the ultimate escape comes through the Son of Man, comes through Jesus Christ. We may not see Christ. Kind of keep that focus. Don't be swayed by every little newscast. Don't be swayed by just the latest news flash. He said, because that will keeps you up here. He says up there in verse 14, but make up your mind not to worry beforehand of how you would defend yourself. Make up your mind beforehand. Before that decision beforehand, I'm going to keep my eyes on Christ. I'm going to keep my eyes on the Lord. I'm going to make sure that I have my life surrendered to Christ. I am living for Christ, and I am not going to be swayed by what Fox or CNN or MSNBC says next. I'm going to read Luke 21 today. You can kind of get a little more context. And again, we do not have to fear. We don't have to fear. He's talking to his disciples. We don't have to fear. Watch and pray. Keep our eyes on Christ. So God bless you guys. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Starting your weekend today, Friday. We'll be at